Hello and welcome to Jill Cameron Creations. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss a single video. Birds with bold pops of color and neutral backgrounds. I'm using the stamp set Build a Flower Columbine Stamp and Die by Altenew, as well as the Whimsical Herringbone background. I first started with my background. I inked in 3 different gray colors from Altenew: Limestone, Silverstone, and Industrial Diamond, and I just randomly placed those colors on the background. Next, we're going to build our flower, and this is a stamp layering set. I'm going to stamp each color twice. We're going to start with our lightest color first as our background. Actually, that should be base color. 2 ink cubes for this in Wisteria, Hydrangea, and Andromeda. As with most all Altenew stamp sets, there is a stamp layering guide. And this particular flower has a lot of different sections to it. So I had the stamp positioning guide right beside me as I was stamping. Just a moment ago you saw me show Versamark ink. I use Versamark to prime my stamps the first time that I use them. Most especially if they are a large surface area that is flat and doesn't have any detail to it. Versamark ink and then wipe it off and then ink my stamp, and I get great coverage. The first time that I used the stamp. Since I wanted slightly bolder colors for this, I skipped one of the mid-tones in the purples and went straight to the darkest color. That gave me the dramatic detail layer on that stamp. In the center of the flower, I wanted to make sure that my placement was correct. So I used a piece of acetate over my stamped panel and stamped on it first to make sure I had my placement correct. As most of you know by now, purple is my favorite color, and I love purple and yellow together. But I wanted to go a little bit bolder this time, so I'm going with oranges. I'm using Altenew ink for this as well, Sunkissed, Orange Cream, and Firebrick. So I'm skipping that next to darkest color again so that I get that really bold detail in this. In the video, I only demonstrate stamping out one of the blooms for the flower, but I stamped out another one, and I also stamped out some greenery to go with it. The sentiment that I'm using is Hello Darling, the Whimsical Herringbone background set. I white heat embossed the sentiment on some dark gray cardstock, and I'm going to cut that down into a square and place that to the side, right hand side, on my card front. This card and the following card were both inspired by the Altenew class Color My Day. Use different colors in combination with each other on your cards. It's also part of the Altenew Certified Educator program, which I'm working through. Now, card put together. I'm using liquid adhesive. I had some leftover bottles of Nuvo liquid adhesive. Had like 3 different bottles that had about 1/4 of an inch of adhesive left in the bottom of it. So I just put them all in a needle tip bottle, and that's what I'm using today. A little bit of foam tape on the back of our flowers. And then we're going to add some sequins to add just a touch of shine to the front of our card. Our first card. Use a little pickup tool to pick up my sequins and add just a dot of glue underneath each of them. For the second card, I stenciled the Terrazzo tile stencil set from Altenew, and I used Industrial Diamond, Limestone, and Silverstone, along with the Altenew small blenders. Man, I love these things. Blenders fit my hand so much better than the brushes with the handles do, and I usually hold the brushes that have the big handles on them by the head of it just to get better coverage, and it's easier on my hands. But these small blenders are amazing. They are just perfect size, and I can get in the small areas and I stencil very easily with it. Oh man, I just love these things. A really fun part of this particular stencil set is they don't necessarily have to align. You can overlap them, or you can use it where all of the little areas are in new places. Either one, and it'll still look great. For the front of the card, I'm using the Simply Spring stamp set by Altenew, and I'm stamping this in Copic Safe ink so that I can Copic color one of the large flowers. We're not coloring the whole thing. I'm just going to do one pop of bright orange on the front. I noticed that one area didn't stamp that well, so I'm going to stamp this a second time, just pressing down on that area really well that did not stamp well the first time. Make sure I have a really good dark outline. And I usually clean everything as I put it up. I don't put dirty stamps in my pockets. I will leave Versamark and stick them back in their pockets, but for the most part, I try to clean ink off of them. I colored this bloom using Copic markers in a similar fashion to how our first bloom was stamped in our first card. Color differentiation between my lightest color and the darkest color. The lightest color that I'm using is YR000, and then I'm going to move on to YR04 and YR07, but YR07 is not sitting on the table right now. There'd be enough difference between the YR00 and the YR000, but it wasn't enough difference to be able to tell the difference. These colors to be blended together. I wanted that stark difference between each layer of color. Typically, I color from darkest to lightest, but because I wanted such a stark difference in these colors, I did not do it. I actually went from lightest to darkest, filling in the entire bloom first with my lightest color, which was YR00. I went in with YR04 next, and then I'm going to go in with that YR07 to add my darkest areas. And there's no blending here. I'm literally just putting in color, and the end result is gorgeous. So now I'm going to take the coordinating die and die cut this out, and it's going to go on the edge, the left-hand edge of our panel that we stenciled at the beginning. I trimmed off the side of the paper so that it would fit in my die cutting machine, because the way the paper was with the die, it was just a shade too wide. Die cut piece on top of my stenciled piece, I was not that thrilled with it. It was pretty, but it was too busy, and it wasn't enough contrast between the background and the floral. I went ahead and glued it down anyway, because I'd come this far and I knew I would figure it out, and I did. Wait till the end. I wasn't even going to attempt to match the cardstock for the oranges. So instead, I colored a section of white cardstock with the darkest orange marker. I made sure that my cardstock was dry so that my embossing powder would not stick to it in areas. Thankfully, alcohol marker dries really quick. So I added my anti-static powder tool and I stamped my sentiment, and that is from the Simply Spring stamp set as well, and I'm using Altenew's pure white, crisp white embossing powder. I popped that sentiment up with a little bit of foam tape, and now I'm gonna walk away for a few minutes, and this is how I come up with things when I'm stumped, because I liked the card but it just needed something else. So what do I do when I'm stumped? I'll walk away from it for a little while, eat something, and then come back. I found a Copic marker, and I believe it's a W1, that blended really well with the mid-tone ink that I used in the background, and I'm just doing a solid fill on the rest of that floral stamp set. This just knocks back that white a little bit and actually makes that bloom pop out a little bit more, and the rest of it blend into the background and make it look more like it's part of the background there. And I absolutely loved this when I was done with it. I hope you have enjoyed and are inspired by bold pops of color on neutral backgrounds. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss a single video, and I will be working on another Altenew inspired card soon.